Hello, today's video is all about Microsoft Azure in Privileged Cloud Shared Services. My name is Brad McDowell and I'm a Senior Privileged Cloud Consultant here in Australia. So the objectives for the Microsoft Azure platform is we'll configure the Azure platform application keys and password management platforms that are presented out of the box within Privileged Cloud Shared Services. We will need to create an application in Azure. We'll call this CyberArk CPM. Then we'll onboard this CyberArk CPM application into CyberArk and rotate the credentials. And then we'll onboard regular cloud accounts from Azure Cloud into CyberArk. And with those accounts, we'll be able to establish PSM sessions to the Azure Web Portal using those cloud accounts. And I'll also show you how we can establish PSM sessions to the Azure Web Portal using Active Directory domain accounts that are onboarded into the Privileged Cloud Shared Services. And then finally, we'll duplicate the Azure Web Portal connection component, and then we'll use that to create the Microsoft MyApps portal example in this demonstration. And that's a common example because you've probably already got a lot of applications already configured in the MyApps portal. And then we'll establish a PSM session to the MyApps portal using an Active Directory domain account. I'll switch over to the lab now and we'll get started. On workstation 1 in the lab, and I'll show you what I've done in Azure. I've set up two accounts. One's a global administrator and one is just a regular user in Azure. Our plan is to onboard these two into CyberArk. I've also set up the Azure AD Connect. And this is an on-premise user that will also use the PSM to establish Chrome sessions to Azure. I will show the CyberArk links to the marketplace for each of the components that we'll need. All of these components are pre-installed out of the box with Privileged Cloud. So we'll need this one, which is the Azure application keys. We will create an application to help us rotate accounts. The second link is for the Azure accounts. This is the CPM for the Azure password management. And then finally, we have the PSM connection component for the Azure portal that is pre-installed also. I'll leave these links in the description, but we'll go back to Privileged Cloud here, and I'll create two safes to start off with. This first safe will be called the Azure CPM. This is where we'll keep the Azure CPM application key, and we'll skip and create safe on that. I'm not going to cover permissions. And I'll create a second safe, which will have our just generic Azure accounts that we onboard in this demo. I'll go down to administration, then platform management, and we're going to focus on the cloud service section here, and specifically the Azure applications here. We'll duplicate this one here first, and we'll give it a name. And we'll duplicate the Azure password management as well. And then I'll activate the two platforms I created. Over in Azure, we need to create an app registration. So we'll go to Microsoft Entra ID, App Registrations, and we'll create a new registration. We'll give this a name, and we'll hit Register. We will need to document this information here. Back in Azure, we'll go to Certificates and Secrets, and we'll create a new client secret. We'll give this a name, we'll hit Add. It's important that we copy both of these values, so I'll grab the actual password, which is value, and the secret ID. Back in Azure, we need to go to API permissions, and we'll add a permission. We'll select Microsoft Graph and delegated permissions, and search for directory. So we need directory.access as user all. Add that. We'll add a second permission. We'll go to Microsoft Graph again, application permissions, and we'll search for application.read, and we need read write all and read write owned by. We'll add the permissions, and we'll grant the admin consent and select yes. So now that we have that created, we do need to give this application permissions to some roles in the directory. So we'll go back to home here, and then back to Entra ID, and we'll go to roles and administrators. So there's two ways that we could approach this. We could simply give it global admin rights, and that would give it all the permissions it needs, but we want to follow least privilege. So I'll just show you the permissions that we need for this. So the first one is password administrator. We'll select that, add an assignment, and we'll search for CyberArk CPM. We'll add that. We'll go back to roles again. We'll search for user administrator, and we'll add an assignment. Again, we'll search for CyberArk. We'll add that one. And we'll go back to roles again. And we'll search for privilege authentication administrator. And there we are. So that's completed. So there was 3 roles: password administrator, user administrator, and privilege authentication administrator. I'll head back to Privilege Cloud, and we'll go to accounts, and then we'll add an account. And this will be a cloud service account. And we're interested in the application keys management. So we'll select that. And this will go in the Azure CPM safe. And you don't need to require a username or address, but I will in this case. I'll call this CyberArk CPM. And I like to put an address, portal.azure.com, just so it will come up in searches and things like that. So we need the password. The password is the secret that we got before, or the value of the secret. Next, we need the application ID, which was the first item. Then we need the application object ID, which is this one. Then we need the key ID for the secret that we had before. So that's this one down here. And then finally, we need the Active Directory ID or tenant ID, which is this one. Now we've done that, we'll press add, and I'll go and favorite that account. And back to the favorites view. I'll verify this account, and I'll head over to the CPM server, or connect to server 1, and we'll restart the service. And back on the workstation, I'll refresh. And we can see it's been verified by the prod CPM. So that means we entered in all the details correctly. I'll hit change to change that password, and change again. And back on connect to server 1, I'll restart the service. Back on the workstation, I'll refresh. As we can see, the prod CPM has changed the password on this account. So that's great. I'll now onboard 2 more accounts, which are the Azure Cloud accounts. So we'll add them now. Add account. This will be a cloud service. And this time we will need to select Microsoft Azure Password Management Platform that we duplicated earlier. And I'm going to stick both of these in the Azure account safe here. So the username I'll stick in here. We don't need to provide an address, but I like to put in portal.azure.com, put in the known password, and we need the Active Directory ID. So I'll go back to here and grab the Active Directory tenant ID. And that's all we need. You do not need to provide the application ID here. We do, however, need to link an account shortly. So I'll go to the All Accounts view, and I'll favorite that Global Administrator and go back to Favorites. I'll click on this Global Admin, and we'll click on Additional Details in the Classic Interface. And this is where we need to associate the logon account, application account, and reconcile. So I'll do that now. Now that we've done that, I'll head back to the Accounts view, and we'll select the Global Admin account here, and we'll select Verify. I'll restart the service quickly. And refresh. You can see this has been verified by the prod CPM, so that's great. I'll now hit change and change again. And back on connect to server 1, I'll restart the service. Back on the workstation, I'll refresh. As we can see, it's been checked out by the prod CPM. I was a little impatient there. And after refreshing, we can see it's been verified. I'll hit change again. And back on connect to server 1, I'll restart the service. Once again, I'll refresh. As we can see, it's currently in progress. That's great. The prod CPM has changed that password. I'll now add another account. So I'll select Cloud Service, the Azure Password Management Platform. We'll select Azure Accounts again here. We'll stick in the username and an address. This time I won't enter in a password. We'll do a reconcile procedure. We'll grab the tenant ID. And we'll hit add. Again, I'll favorite that account and go back to favorites. So I'll click on the CA user one. We know the verify process won't work because we didn't provide a password. So we'll go to the additional details in the classic interface and link the CyberArk CPM. That's great. I'll go back to the accounts view and we'll select the CA user one and select reconcile this time. And back on connect to server one, I'll restart the service. And after refreshing, we can see the prod CPM has reconciled this account. I'll select verify just for confirmation. And back on connect to server one, I'll restart the service. And I'll refresh again back in the portal. We can see this has been verified. Our next goal is to use this connect button and connect to the Microsoft Azure portal using the PSM with Chrome. This won't work out of the box yet. We'll go to configuration options here, connection components, and we'll go to the Microsoft Azure portal here. First thing I'll do is make this full screen. We'll go to target settings and then client specific, and we'll go to enable trace here and we'll set this to yes. We'll go to browser path here and set this to the 64-bit version of Google Chrome. Apply that. And as demonstrated in a previous demo, we'll copy the allow select HTML5 and paste that in under the user parameters here. And this is so the session launches in a web browser tab. And we'll select OK. If I go back to platform management, we expand our cloud service. And we'll go to manage PSM connectors here. This platform is pointing at connector server 1. So back in the accounts view. So I'll now restart the service. So back on connector server 1, we'll restart the PSM service. Otherwise, we'll have to wait 10 minutes. Back on the workstation, we'll try and use the global admin 1 account. We'll hit connect and then connect again. As we can see, the credentials are being entered. And I'm prompted on my phone to do the MFA. Of course, you could turn this off with conditional access and other features, but I won't cover that in this video. And as we can see here, we've got a validation issue, just like with the Palo Alto. I'll show you how we'll fix that shortly. To fix the validation issue, I'll open up the configuration options in a new tab, and I'll copy my password for the brad.admin. And if we go to connection components, the Azure portal, target settings, then web form settings, we have these items here. So just show you how CyberArk will log into Azure and where the validation is failing. So open up an incognito window and I'll go to portal.azure.com. So if we right click here and we go inspect on the username, we can see the ID for the username is I0116, as we can see here. So if I stick in my username and we'll select next, and we inspect that, we can see the ID is IDS button 9, as we can see there. So that's the next button. And as we can see, the button after we select the username is button 9. So I'll select next. If we right click on the password field and go inspect again, we can see the password is I0118, as we can see there. Before I put in my password, I'll right click on the sign in button and go inspect. And we can see it's IDS button 9 is the sign in button, as you can see there. So I'll put in my password now. And then we have this screen here. So if we right click on the yes button and go inspect, we can see the ID for that button is IDS button 9. So I want CyberArk to automatically press yes when we sign in. So I'll select that now, and now we're logged in. So we need to find a way for CyberArk to validate the login has been successful. If we right click on the search bar here and hit inspect, we can see this ID here. So what we need to do is we need to hit the button 9 twice, and then we need to replace all this validation because it's not valid for Azure anymore, and I'll use this as the validation option for logging into Azure. So what will happen now is we're putting in the username, we're selecting next, we're putting in our password, selecting next, the MFA will occur, and then you get that yes, no, do you want to stay signed in? And then finally, we have the validation here at the end, which is this ID here. So hit OK on that, and then hit apply, and then OK again. I'll go back to the connector server 1 and restart the PSM service. And back on the workstation, I'll connect using the global admin 1 account. Do the MFA. And that's logged in. I've waited at least a minute now, and I don't see any validation errors. So I'll just disconnect. Next, our goal is to use this brad.admin account to connect to Azure. It's not in the list at the moment, so we need to add the connection component here. But before I can do that, we need to duplicate it. We'll go to configuration options, connection components, and we'll find the MS Azure portal, and I'll duplicate that. And we'll put a dash domain on the end, and we'll update the display name as well. So we'll apply that. And then we'll go to target settings and then web form settings, and we'll edit the web form fields. So the account I have in CyberArk is just brad.admin. That won't work for Azure. We need to append the domain name. So I'll just hard code that into this connection component like this, and I'll select OK, apply, and we'll save that by clicking OK. I'll now go to platform management. We'll go to Windows, and on this platform here, we'll go and manage the PSM connectors. We'll search for Azure, and here we have the Microsoft Azure portal -domain. We'll associate that and hit save. On connector server 1, I'll restart the service so I don't have to wait 10 minutes. Then back on the workstation, I'll go to the accounts view, and we'll go to the brad.admin account or the Active Directory account, and we'll connect to the Azure portal. And that's logged in successfully. So I'll close that. Now that we have the Azure portal working, I'll just show you another method that's quite common, and that's the MyApps.microsoft.com portal. This is quite handy because in a lot of environments, you will have existing applications already configured here. So if I go back to Privileged Cloud, I'll go to configuration options first. We'll go to connection components, and I'll be focusing on the connection component for domain users. You could, of course, apply this logic to the local cloud users. So I'll copy this, we'll paste this up here, we'll replace the name, we'll call this MyApps portal, and we'll update the display name, and we'll hit apply, and we'll go to web form settings, and we'll update this URL here to this, and this will break unless we update the validation. I won't demonstrate how I find the validation for this one, but you can apply the same logic as you did in the Azure portal. I'll just grab that now. And it's this validation here. So I'll select OK, and we'll apply this. I'll go back to Platform Management, expand out Windows, and we'll edit this platform again by going to Manage PSM Connectors. We'll search for MyApps, and here it is here. We'll associate that and hit Save. And of course, we'll go back to Connector Server 1 and we'll restart the PSM service because I don't want to wait 10 minutes. And then back on the workstation, we'll hit Connect and connect to the MyApps portal. As we can see, that's logged in. The administrator can go to the admin portal or wherever they need to go from this application. We'll now close this, and I'll finish the video here. Thank you for watching.